Retirement. It used to mean freedom, a reward for decades of hard work, but for millions of Americans today, that dream is cracked wide open. Instead of relaxing, many people in their 70s and 80s are still clocking in, some for minimum wage, and people in their 20s and 30s are planning never to retire, not because they don't want to, because they think they have to stay working. Let's face it, retirement is broken. So in this episode, we have a financial expert, Michelle Perkins, who's going to join us to see why the system no longer works for so many and what's doing to our mental health, our sense of purpose, and our belief in the future. We'll talk about what it really means to age well in a country where growing old has become a financial gamble. Today on Off the Couch. Welcome to Off the Couch with Dr. Greg for Psychology for Everyday Life. I'm Dr. Greg Cason, psychologist, here with producer Brian Gomez.
Hey, how are you guys?
Today I have a special guest. She's someone who used to do her show in the same studio as myself. So, I mean, she was always one of our favorite guests, and you actually have one of our highest views on YouTube for one of your shows. My special guest is Michelle Perkins, the founder and CEO of Limit Free Life. It's a coaching and consulting company dedicated to helping people create freedom, purpose, and prosperity in their work and their finances. You're also the host of the Money and You. Well, it could be me too, but Money and You podcast, or it's Money and You with Michelle Perkins podcast. And Michelle is a certified business coach and money coach, and she has a background in entrepreneurship and executive leadership. You're also a recovering CPA, if I remember that correctly. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Greg. I'm super happy to be here with you and Brian.
No, I'm super happy about it. Hey, I want to talk about this topic because I'm old, and I'm getting there.
And in fact, I recently turned 62. And what is it about the age of 62? Well, it's actually the first year that you can take Social Security.
Yes.
And I had to think, wow, that is a weird milestone to get to. Yeah. And then, 65, you can take Medicare, or that's a good thing because of the amount I pay for health insurance is through the roof. And then after that, it's just Social Security and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm sliding into home base. What the hell am I doing? What have I been doing all these years? So my own anxiety brought me to this topic, and I wanted to talk with you about it. So let's talk about the new reality of retirement. I went to the National Council on Aging's website and found that 80% of adults 60 plus are struggling financially. 80%.
That's a big percentage.
In the same National Council on Aging analysis, 50% of people 60 and older don't have an income that the Elder Index says is necessary to survive in the area where they live. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
And among adults 65 plus, more than 17 million, about 1 in 3 65 plus older adults are considered economically insecure. That's 200% or below of the poverty line.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Well, first of all, I think the stats I'm sure are accurate. They don't tell the whole story, though. I mean, they do paint a pretty bleak picture, and we tend to throw ourselves in the mix. I've had several, all of a sudden, Tony, you know this, we've been on a little retirement kick where I've had several experts talking about retirement.
Oh, excellent.
And it's been great. And pretty much the consensus is that it's broken, just like you said. But I don't think it's doomed for all of us. I think we go about it in different ways. And our lifestyles are different and our needs are different. And when they put those stats together, it sounds really, really scary. And while they're true, and there's a lot of work that people, need to do, awareness is important. Mm-hmm. And being aware of that, we can start paying more attention right now for, those of us who are not yet there, wherever there is anymore. I don't know, there could be
Well, that's another topic, which we'll get to, which is where is the end of the road? Like, what is retirement?
Yeah.
Because we used to think it was just like taking a big pension and going and smoking cigars and, I don't know, going to baseball games.
But it really has become something very different for many people.
Right. And I think there was a simplicity about it years ago. And I had a guest recently on the show. His name is Jonathan Gray, and he wrote this book called The Future Score.
And he is a financial planner, but also an ethicist, and studied ethics in college and some other interesting things, and has tried to combine those, and really has taken a deep dive into the brokenness of the system and how, first looking at the history, he has actually a video on his website that goes through the history of how Social Security came about, and what the expectations were about retirement and how much things cost back then, and how the numbers made sense when it all started. And they don't make sense anymore. People live longer, costs are higher. I mean, all the things that made the formula work don't work anymore. And we don't get pensions anymore. And, there's a lot of things that have changed. So what was set up in a time period where it really helped people and went on for decades helping people. And now it doesn't really work anymore. And so what he has to say in his book is really profound and interesting. And it just highlights the fact that we kind of have to accept the fact that it's all changed, which is hard to do because we've grown up watching our parents or just thinking about retirement as this, and the financial industry, of course, has pushed it as well. This is what you do so you can retire at 65, which also doesn't make that, 62, I'm older than you. It doesn't really, I don't know if you want to retire like in the next 2 years, but I don't.
I don't want to give up working.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
what I want to do is to get to a place where I don't have to work.
Right.
Right now, I have to work.
Yeah.
I got a mortgage and this and that.
I feel like you just hit the nail on the head because that's what retirement should be. It should be you making
kind of empowered decisions about how long you work. And I don't think we need society telling us what that age is. I don't really think we ever needed that. I think also, if you look at some other statistics, when people used to retire at 65, they usually kind of lived till 70, 75. It was almost like retirement then death. And now, one of the experts I had on the show was saying is, for many people these days, retirement goes on longer than your working life.
Holy Toledo. Well, that would put me at like 120. I think I started working at 14.
Well, yeah, that one might be a little bit of a stretch, but it does happen for people. There are people who've worked 30 years and then live another 30 years, so maybe they retired early. Obviously, they retired early. But I really think the redefining of the whole thing, and maybe we have to, really get ahead of the game and decide on our own what our retirement's going to look like, how we're going to handle it, without all the messaging from the world at large.
The crazy messaging. And, you brought up such an interesting point. I look at my grandparents. I hadn't thought about this, but my grandparents, my grandma lived till 72. She died of a brain, she had a brain tumor. She fell down at work where she was, in fact, a sales girl still.
Yeah.
In a department store. She was working in the lingerie section, but she fell down, and then they discovered this, and that was the end of that. Actually, I think she was 74, excuse me. Here nor there. And she was having to work throughout her entire life. She earned minimum wage her entire life. Her husband died when she was very young. My mom was 10, and so she lost her father, and so she had to basically go to work and work minimum wage her entire life. My other grandparents on the other side, my grandma died in her 50s of lung cancer, another early death, and my grandfather, I thought he lived much longer, but my dad told me he only lived to 62. Wow. And he was a manual laborer. He installed things, and he was a construction guy. So, this is the working poor that I came from, I grew out of. And they never had that luxury to stop.
Right. Right.
And I think that's the toughest thing.
It is tough, but when you think about their ages too, they probably wouldn't. I mean, in some cases, they wouldn't have stopped anyway. They would have been too young, really, to be considering retirement.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one size fits all anymore at all.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I think we kind of have to let go of a lot of the old stories about what retirement is, when it happens, and really ask ourselves a lot of deep questions. Because the other thing is, like all things financial, it feels like people have kept it sort of vague. Like, I want to retire. Well, what do you want to do in retirement? I just had a guy on my show talking about that. Like, it's a big deal when you retire. And it can be very unhealthy if you haven't planned, if you don't know how you're going to spend your days and how you're going to, enrich your mind and be around people. Because what happens in retirement, too, is people get isolated. They're not at work anymore. It's a lot of negatives about retirement. So there are some, big health benefits, not necessarily to grinding it out at a job you don't like, but to some kind of work,
Well, you bring up, that's an interesting psychological point, and I want to get to Brian, but the interesting psychological point, and maybe we'll talk about this a little later, is one of the main things that really helps people is not the fact they're working, but that they have purpose.
Yeah.
And people can bring that purpose into just about anything, including work, which I find purpose in my work. So that's actually makes some sense to me. But also people can find purpose in home or family or pets or friends or, all kinds of different things. So.
Yeah, purpose is a huge aspect of work that, while we focus a lot on the money, it brings a lot of value to our lives that way. Now, that said, a lot of people need to make sure there is purpose in what they're doing. Maybe there's no purpose in work, and when they retire, they get to do that purposeful thing that they've always dreamt of, But it's complicated. I mean, if you really don't want to work into your old age, again, everything with finance, in my opinion, with money is two parts. Mindset. And what you do. The actions you take, the plans you make, the conversations you have. Because you have to figure out how to think differently and be creative in how you think about it, but also be somewhat positive, regardless of your actual situation, to see a hopeful future for yourself. If you see it and you expect it to really be just hard and painful, I just can't envision a place where that, results in a better financial situation.
Well, you're so interesting about that. I think that's exactly right. I really do think that's exactly right. And I do believe, and we do have research, that people who are more optimistic actually do better, which is nice. So if you're really looking forward and if you think you can achieve something, you're more likely to achieve it. But also, I noticed myself, too, falling to a little bit of a bias in that as well, because I used AI. I was going through some scenarios before this show, and I was, asking ChatGPT, and then I asked Perplexity. Now, what was interesting, Perplexity is another AI model, and I went into ChatGPT, and it's like, right on, you go, here's the scoop. And I think I would prefer that, and I was reading through it, and I didn't feel very inspired by it.
Yeah.
Even though it was the same exact information. So we do have a bias in our human brain toward, encouragement and positive biases. So that's actually a really important thing.
Well, I think, too, and again, you have more insight into this, but this is my opinion, that when we're too stressed, when we're too in fear or doubt or anxiety, we can't make good decisions anyway. And so we either avoid money altogether. We don't even take the basic steps that would help us be in a better position when we, are retired or for any reason. And so I just feel like that has to be almost managed, dealt with, tamed. I don't know what the word is before anything else.
And, let's talk about anxiety for 1 second, because I think, there's kind of a basic formula for anxiety that's
Okay.
important for people to know. That anxiety is sort of on top, on the bottom, our denominator is the threat.
Mm-hmm.
And on top, I'm reversing that. I'm sorry. On the bottom is the top, the numerator is the threat, and the bottom is our ability to handle the threat. Mm-hmm. So we can lower the number if we feel more confident about the future.
Right.
Also, if we look at it more realistically, we're going to also lower the numerator, the top number. So the bottom line is that when you feel more confident, you're not going to feel as much anxiety. When you're feeling a lot of anxiety, you tend to be doing things like catastrophizing, thinking the worst is going to happen.
Right.
And our brain does this to try to trick us to say, oh, if we prepare for the worst, and everything's going to be okay. And what I do with clients, I'm just like, let's prepare for the worst. Let's talk about what you do in the worst. There's your plan. Let's set it over there. It's there.
Yeah.
That's your safety net. Now let's go on the high wire. Let's go up and, really take the risks. So
That's huge. And I think if you treat money that way, you'll be much better off. I mean, there are books written back in 1909, 1910 by Wallace Wattles, and he's talking about that, and I don't know how he understood the brain as well as he did, but, one of the biggest ways for people to get rich, be great, whichever book you're looking at of his, a lot of it is you can't get there if you're caught up in too much fear and doubt and worry. And so you have to figure that one out first. And I love your idea about planning, because that's really what the financial industry tries to do for people. They try to plan for worst case scenarios. Mm-hmm. And we do that with insurance. We do that with a lot of different things. And it's great to do that because it does bring a little bit of peace of mind. It does calm your nervous system to know that there's a plan. The plan doesn't work very well if you don't execute on it. So, there's actions to take. But if you have that, and you're right, then you can go and take more risks, I think, too. And it's exactly what you just said. But I think it applies so well to money.
And this is why I like you, because you give a psychological understanding for money and what we need. So let's help Brian, because Brian...
Let's help Brian.
Well, Brian is actually in the millennial generation, the kind of lost generation. Let's talk about what I found, some statistics. This is from TIAA, so I don't know. I mean, we could see Gen Z, the 18 to 24s, only 20% are saving for retirement. When I say only, I was kind of impressed.
Yeah, actually.
1 in 5? Are you kidding?
They're actually kind of a budget conscious group.
Good for them, because I'm telling you, 18 to 24, the only thing I budgeted for was beer. And I mean, that sounds a little rude, but
no, I
wasn't
remember
far
too.
from it. Young adults, 20 to 29, that's only 20 to 26 believe that they're on the right track for retirement, and that seems actually still a big number to me. Millennials, though, Brian, their confidence and preparedness, 66%, 2/3 of them have nothing saved for retirement, and they have a lot of anxiety about it. In fact, Brian was talking to me. Talk to us, Brian. What's it like? What's it like being a millennial in the city of in the city of angels, where everything costs a lot?
Well, I was thinking while you guys were talking, I'm like, growing up, like my parents, I was never exposed to like retirement or like what that would even look like in the future, or school, like college. Yeah, that seemed like a far reach too, but like it was never something that was like super instilled into me. So even thinking about it now, I'm like, wow, like I have no idea where to really go. Taxes was a whole foreign thing too. I wish they taught us exactly how to do that in high school instead of home economics, But I'm like, I would need to do my taxes instead of eating,
What a great idea.
Yeah.
To teach you how to fill out a tax form in high school.
Yeah. Or FAFSA. FAFSA was a whole thing, financial aid thing,
Yeah.
Yeah, they had some counselors, but it's like we should kind of get all the help financially that we can, before we step out into the real world. And like now, I feel like I'm in like a generation where like everybody's having to become an entrepreneur to survive, because the job market is sucking right now, and we kind of have like an attitude that we're not willing to work or like take pennies to like, you know, break our backs for companies that we've seen just throw away their employees like nothing because of what's happening either economically or like, you know, politically, or just there's so many factors that are throwing our lives kind of for a loop. And then the house market, that seems kind of like even more impossible to even attain. I at least have like the VA home loan that will help me up in the future, but I feel like for a lot of people, it's very not even in their vision board at this point, you know, just because everything's so expensive and we don't know where anything is going at this point in life. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like from my point of view, I never really saved or anything like that either. So saving seems a little like taboo almost, you know? And I feel like a lot of people are that way. Like we barely have enough money to pay rent. Like, how are we going to save at this point? You know? So at this, like, I feel like I'm having to work like 3 jobs to kind of just get by. And LA is expensive. Like, that's just what it is, you know? And I choose to live here. We all do because of how great the city is overall. But realistically, it's like, it's a whole new world, like you guys were mentioning. Everything's changed. So we don't really have like a blueprint from like what our parents were doing or like, you know, investing into homes. Investing is a whole nother thing. It's like, yeah, you can gamble and maybe win, but like if you have the money to even gamble it. So it just feels like you guys said, it's chaos kind of financially for us on where to go from here. So I don't know.
Expert right here, Brian. What? Not me. What can you?
I mean, I don't know what advice we could get for like.
Well, you brought up something that I think is really interesting that I've never thought of until I was looking at you speak about this. But your generation is the closest to, you know, you probably do look at retirement in the way we used to look at it and the way our parents looked at it. And there were certain things that you did and you invested early and you had your, you know, there were. So as I'm watching you say this, I'm realizing it makes sense that it's actually scarier for maybe even the millennials than it is for Gen Z, because they're kind of recreating things as they go, because they don't have, I mean, they see it already as broken and they're like, how are we going to do this? But for you, I'm sure there was a good part of your life where you were kind of depending on certain structures and ways of doing things that would work for you, and you didn't find that maybe. And so then it was like a shock at kind of a later time and a little more disappointment. I think when people are massively disappointed about how things are going, your inability to buy a house, for example, when that was the plan, you know, I think that paralyzes people a little bit too. There's that kind of sadness and disappointment, and you know, expectations don't look like they can be met. And so I guess I think it goes back to the psychological thing where it's kind of like, can't happen for me, you know, and then you feel really stuck. So I think, again, I always feel like people are just listening to me going, oh my God, please do not say this word again. But it goes back to mindset.
No,
and
we like that.
Rethinking how this could
that
go
gives us some
forward.
hope.
Because there's a lot of looking back. And I've really found this too as kind of watching my kids grow up. Like there's been about a 5-year period where all I did was look back and go, wow, it's never going to be that good again. Like it was so fun when they were little. And then I go through all the memories and then I get sad. And then I'm like, so I was a little paralyzed by that for a little while. And I suddenly realized if you don't have things to look forward to, you know, and even if they don't sound so great, for a while it was like I could look forward to that trip, but it still doesn't make up for how great it was with the kids. So I feel like kind of working through that whole empty nester thing is similar in that I finally found a way to look ahead and think, okay, I think I can get excited about certain things I want to do. There's some books I want to write. There's some things I want to do. And suddenly it felt energizing again. And I feel like even with money, you know, when you have to kind of grieve the loss of what you thought was going to happen, then you can move on and frankly probably still make some of those things happen. But it takes a different outlook instead of a, you know, it just doesn't work that way anymore. It's not going to happen. It can happen. It is a perspective shift. And then, again, some strategizing about what can you do. I mean, as far as homes, it's really interesting. You brought up another great point. And I interrupt myself constantly, but I'm doing it again. You know, we do make certain choices. When we live in LA or New York, or we go to Air One for lunch, you know, whatever it is. I mean, some of these are my personal ones.
Expensive.
There are things that we do that are counterproductive to some of the things that we say we want. So we have to be kind of honest with ourselves and balance that out. If you find you can't save,
You probably can save something. You know, it might not be everything that you think you need. It won't be what your financial advisor says that you need, but it's still a lot of it's habit. And so if we can get in that habit.
It's so hard when you're his age, I think.
I know.
Because I was, I mean, okay, so I think Brian and I share something in common, which I graduated into a recession. That was in the 80s. And it was, you know, greed was good, but not for all. And greed actually helped topple a lot of the economy, especially here in Southern California. And then Brian came out when we had the 2008 crash.
Yeah.
And that was another big thing in our society that set back a lot of things. So then it just becomes like you feel like you're on a hamster wheel.
Yes.
And like how much of your income goes to rent? 50, 60, 70% going to rent. You know, sometimes it's rent is the number one and everything else is just secondary.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I'm not trying to kind of, you know, blow over the impact emotionally about all of this at all. But I find, too, that people start improving their financial lives at any age. I mean, I know a lot of women who, you know, they're in their 60s. Maybe they got divorced late and suddenly they're kind of starting over, you know, and they didn't get much in the divorce. So it's not the financial, you know, world is it's a lot of ups and downs. I mean, it isn't a straight line, I don't think, really, for too many people. I mean, there are a few out there, but for most people, there's the cycles and the ups and downs. And so you have to continually adjust and rethink and start over in some cases.
No, I agree with that 100%. I feel like Dr. Greg has seen me struggle the last year since I got laid off from my other job, that I thought it was going to be so easy for me to get any type of job coming out of that, you know, because I've never struggled before with getting a job or even applying for a job. They were kind of just handed to me from whenever I needed or wanted a job, you know? So that was a big rude awakening for me, that I was like, oh, this isn't happening from multiple different like avenues that I was trying to get employed anywhere, that I did have to shift and try different things, try different projects, reach out to different people. And it's barely now just like, okay, finally it's flowing, and I can feel it's got some momentum now, you know, but it wasn't easy. And I always told you how I was kind of surprised with how well-ish I was handling it from what had happened, that I'm like, wow, I like lost all sorts of income. Like, it was a big rude awakening for me that I had to pivot and try as many things as possible job-wise to land me where I am now, you know, and finally like, oh, okay, I can finally, you know, I feel like I'm swimming out of the water now, you know, but it is, I mean, it's different, you know, but your mentality is like the biggest thing, like you said. Like, if I would have just given up, or I don't think I would have found, and it's stuff I'm enjoying doing too. On top of that, you know, it would have been retail and I would have hated it or something, you know, but now I'm like working on actual projects and I'm seeing the stuff that I like come to fruition, you know?
Well, and that's a beautiful point too, because maybe if you now like what you're doing enough, it won't matter to you if you have to work an extra 5-10 years at this. You might, you know, that. So
That's a good point.
I think looking at careers, you know, we have to look at retirement differently, but we have to look at the career. And this is how my company started, is career coaching. And I didn't like the way careers were built and developed long before this. And that's why, having worked in the corporate world and seeing kind of how people made decisions about what to do, and it was out of kind of more of a scarcity mindset. You know, I have to do this because it's the only thing out there that makes money, or I have to do this because other careers are, you know, something wrong with them. And I didn't like that because most of the people I worked with were unhappy. So what you're saying, I think you're bringing up a great point, and I've worked with a lot of people lately who are sort of, maybe they've lost their job, so they're applying for new jobs, but it's kind of half-hearted. Like they also have these other things they want to do. So they're still applying, they're still interviewing, they're still building something else on the side. And the way I see it is at some point you'll either get something and that'll maybe, you know, help fund the other project, or you'll just love it and you'll just put all your time in. But I feel like we get to decide along the way now. And so and I do think today's career world, you have to try things. It's new. There are a lot of new things out there that never existed. There are a lot of old things going away. And so it's a very rapidly changing environment that we have to keep upping our skills and trying new things. And, you know,
I think this is so right on, actually, what you're saying. It's kind of interesting to me because I'm going, I didn't quite see it this way. But you kind of have to take risks, but calculated risks.
Exactly.
It's like somebody who's too risky is just going to always stay in one place. They're just going to continue trying and failing. It's like a gambler.
Yeah.
You know, they try for the high payout and they keep falling on their face.
Yeah.
But I think back to when I, you know, rented an apartment, and I remember how hard the apartment rent was to make for several years. And then finally I was really good. I mean, was paying the rent on the apartment. Everything was good. I had a car. I bought a new car and I started putting money in my retirement account. And then what did I do? I decided I think it's time to buy a house when I was 40. And so when I did buy a house, that I went right back to, now I'm back in the hamster wheel. Like this feels hard.
Yeah.
For a long time I was in that position, and I, you know, like so many people, just stayed in my house instead of moving around, which is financially a good deal because then, you know, the loan is fixed, and so the payment comes down as a result of inflation, essentially. And I can afford more now again. And then now my money's having to go. And I stopped saving for retirement. I said, well, the house is the retirement. That's it. And I had just a small amount in retirement up to that point, and I just left it there. And then I started again, you know, probably about 15 years. I mean, literally it took me a long time to get back to it.
Right.
But what that taught me was, yes, it's okay to take risk, but to be calculated about it. And they were always calculated risks.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. And I think what Brian was saying too is there are a lot of things that you've done that have helped you, you know, in one way or another. Being in the military, there's benefits from that, you know,
those
obviously.
are amazing benefits.
Yeah.
And I don't have a school loan. That's the biggest one. I feel like I am blessed, you know?
No, absolutely. And the VA loan for the house is really great. And
Great.
so I think the other thing we don't do, we spend a lot of time looking at what hasn't happened, you know, or what's harder than it should be. But it's really important, I think, for people to take inventory of their successes, which is kind of what you just did. You know, financial successes happen over a lifetime. They don't seem like much because maybe they're, I don't know, you know, we're still focused on where we haven't gotten to yet so much, especially in today's world where you're seeing where everybody else is all the time, which is really the comparativeness of our
Oh my
culture.
God.
Is
Can
so
we
negative.
talk about that? Okay. Do you ever read those retirement Q's and A's? I get them on my phone all the time because, you know, they know I'm old. And I click on them. It's like, I only have $5 million. I'm 62 and have $5 million. Can I retire? And you're like, F you. And I don't know what to say to these people. I wish they would just be snarky back to these people and say, stop that.
Yeah.
Stop your whining.
Yeah, I was just sitting with the financial planner. We were having a meeting, and she was telling me about a client of hers who I think they have like $7 million in the bank or something. It was a big number. And she said they're in retirement, or they're about to be, but they're so used to saving so much that they can't fathom spending any of that. They're too afraid to spend it, even though they've saved it all.
Oh.
So
That's a different disease.
It's a different problem, but it's just so interesting how money works. And to get to know money, I mean, having an understanding and an education around it is the other thing, because things are changing all the time. LA is actually kind of a buyer's market right now for real estate. I mean, if you look at it, every house that you see, the price has dropped.
Things are coming down.
They're
yes,
coming
I have
down.
noticed
They're
that
on the
in my
market
neighborhood.
way
Longer than it used to be. So that's the other thing, is to be a financially
involved person in your own life. Because if you keep watching things are changing all the time. That same financial advisor, I was having a meeting in the afternoon. She said, okay, great, because I'm really busy in the morning because I'm so excited because the market's down. I'm like, well, that's weird. I didn't really get what she was saying. And but in her mind, the market was down. So she was going through her whole client base, buying stuff for them. And I thought that is so interesting. She was as excited as you could get because she was going to get all these deals. But she's involved with money and she's thinking about it. And if we all could elevate a little bit on that front, I think we can take advantage of, certain situations. We can maximize other situations, even just being in touch with what we're spending. One of the most basic things around. But most of us aren't. I'm not either. I mean, I look at my American Express every month and go, yeah, there's like 10 things on there I should get rid of. And I wait another month.
Me too. This is my experience.
Yeah, it's just we don't take enough time in our lives to devote to money. I just think we all need to be a little smarter with our money, more aware of our own thoughts and feelings, and when we start going down that negative path, like trying to turn it off, trying to say something else to ourselves about what we can. I mean, you're still very young. So you've got plenty of time ahead of you.
It's the Botox. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's the other mindset that I think is really destructive, is I'm too old to turn this around.
Yeah, that is a bad mindset, because I had to kind of pick up the pieces later and I started saving again. And I'm not in a great place, but I would say I'm in a much better place. Like, I'm in a hopeful place.
Right. And that's the other thing, is defining that. Like, what is it that you really need to retire the way you want to? Because people have different goals in retirement. You already know that 5 million. It might be the number. I don't know. But not everybody wants to do the same things in retirement.
No, if I could live in my house, which I love, and I've always loved it, and I've lived there 20 plus years, and it's whatever it is, but I love it.
Yeah.
And if I could travel and see my friends and family, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, and do the things I love, like doing the podcast, et cetera, et cetera. Like, if I can just engage in things I love,
right.
Wow, what an amazing life.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes that doesn't actually cost all that much, but people don't know how much it costs because they don't do the work of sitting down and, figuring that out. And if you can figure that out and you can, make some new decisions about how you're going to reach those goals and get some help. It's very hard to do money on by yourself. It's really important to have that, a financial friend. So whether that's an advisor or an accountant or just an accountability person who's helping you, to get the investment.
You're bringing up such
down.
Another important point. Like, if he hangs out with people who just spend frivolously, he's going to be more likely to spend frivolously. Brian, do you hang around those people?
Well,
I guess that's
we all just like to have a nice time, and sometimes a nice time costs a lot.
He goes to the nicest restaurants.
No.
You know what? That's okay. Like, it is totally okay to do what you want. That's the whole limit-free life thing. But just have an awareness of what the trade-offs are. And if you're okay with the trade-offs, fine. But if not, if there's other things that you want, I just think people don't like being told what to do. That's a brain thing that I read about. Like, if you tell people what to do, they almost automatically
rebel against it.
And I don't know the science behind that, but it's a thing. And so there are some people who, are just sabotaging themselves in a way because they don't want to be told stop doing this or, start doing this. And I just think it comes down to more understanding of what we're doing and why, and tailoring
what
that.
it is you want.
And what it is you
like
want.
the want is the carrot that we're all going toward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that,
I mean, I honestly think one of the biggest expenses, I should look this up, but healthcare is like our biggest deal.
I think actually,
So
yes.
when people worry
Brian's
about
laughing.
retirement, I actually wonder, are they worrying about the actual like retirement? Like, can I pay my rent and eat and pay my mortgage and drive my car still? Or are they really in the back of their mind worrying like, how am I going to handle a fall or something else, that might come up?
What is it? Where are you with healthcare?
Well, that's what I was going to tell you guys. I'm like, I totally forgot about healthcare. Like, since I got laid off and everything, I was like, whatever, I'm healthy. Like, and you hearing you guys say that, I'm like, oh, snaps, if something was to happen, even if I'm at the gym and I tweak my back or something, I break something, I'm like, oh, I don't have health insurance.
Too, and I feel like usually we'd never had this before Affordable Care Act, or what people called Obamacare, which is to actually have subsidies to help pay for premiums, and that we actually had these programs you could actually get and not be redlined out of because you had diabetes or or high blood pressure.
Right.
And so that was such an amazing gift that we got. Thank you for the government. That was President Obama who did that. And it was an amazing accomplishment. But now things are going backwards in a very significant way. And it worries me because as of next year, with the first of the year, there are no more subsidy payments. So they're not. Well, that's what the Democrats shut down. Yeah. They didn't shut down the government. They just basically said, we're not voting for it unless you replace you bring those back.
Yeah, because they have a big awareness of how many people are going to have no health care and what that means. I mean,
and most of them are in red states, so it was kind of an interesting political move. Yeah. They're basically saying, we don't care who it's for. We want to just give it because people need this.
Right.
And that's, I think, the exact right attitude.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think healthcare is, if there's something financially probably to be afraid of, it's that. Because, working, maybe you don't have enough in retirement, you can work. You mentioned the old people working. I go to this hardware store and there's a bunch of old men in there. They're very helpful, so I love it. But I talk to this one guy all the time who is just happiest guy ever. Thrilled to be working there, actually. He's 78, and he enjoys working there, and he likes being able to make some extra income. But I'm not saying that's for everybody, and everybody should be excited to do that, but at least there's that option.
No,
healthcare is that's the one that worries me the most.
Yeah, because although, Medicare, I think, is a great gift to be able to get that, it doesn't cover everything. And it doesn't cover long-term care. It doesn't cover,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the long-term, exactly. But it is a gift. And that was, when I was turning 65, that was what everybody was like so excited for me about. And I hadn't paid any attention because I didn't want to think about any of that. And so I never thought about it. And then all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh my God, so exciting. It's like, okay. But it was pretty great, actually, to get on Medicare.
Yeah, especially because this year, now the renewals, I think people are going to, I got a renewal letter for the Kaiser plan I have. They increased the fee, and I'm like, okay, that's not so bad. But then I looked at the terms of the contract, and I'm like, oh, they made it much harder to get care. Like it has something like a $6,000 deductible, and then, there's all this stuff that's going to be a barrier to care. And I'm like, how does the average person survive with this and not getting any financial assistance? Because the plan I have, I think it's going to be $1,100 a month. I mean, plus it has a high deductible and all these things for an HMO.
I know. I mean, I honestly think, in countries where you don't worry about healthcare and you don't worry about the cost of education, retirement takes on a whole different, it's very, very different.
It is very different.
I don't know that that's adding to the conversation. Didn't want to bring it down here, but yeah. So I for Brian's sake, I really don't want you to have all this anxiety. So I would put it out to you, actually. Like, what do you think you could do just to make yourself feel a little more hopeful around money?
Honestly, I've been just like, okay, we need to have enough clients to make a specific number every month. Okay. That's how I'm looking at it. That I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to have a normal job, so I can't have like insurance through a normal job. So if I was to even get health insurance, I have to make a certain amount. So in my head, I'm like, you have to work your way up client-wise to make enough money to not worry or stress about everything. Because I have no faith or trust in like any system at this point. And I feel like we're seeing that, it's very fragile. Then it's like, all right, well, now it's up to me to make sure that I have enough money coming in to whatever is happening in the world, whatever, I'm going to try to take care of myself, with financially and not depend on an employer, to have money coming into my pocket. I'm just going to have to work for it for myself, So that's the way I'm looking at it, where I'm like, all right, we are just climbing and climbing until we hit like a nice number monthly that I'm just like, okay, we're good, but I know that's still a big, number that I have to achieve, especially here in LA.
Yeah. Which is, LA makes it, it's more expensive, but it's also maybe more achievable because of the population here
Yeah, and I'm seeing it, like I mentioned, I'm seeing the possibilities happen, that, like I said, I had to try different things to finally get into a flow of work that was, like, beneficial for me. And, like, Dr. Greg knows I was just in Paris for work, and it was, like, something I always wanted to even happen that I just didn't know when or how it would, but I just kind of knew it would. And this new client I ended up landing that's part of the job that, came along with it. And it was great that they were able to see like all the skills I do have. And a lot of the times what I'm doing now for PR, I always thought I had to work under a company for years and years and years to like learn everything, learn all the ins and outs, that I'm like, I just had to do it, and meet people that were willing to like bet on me, and it, it's going well. That's why I'm like, it's possible, so that's why I'm like, I see it, that I'm like, okay, if I can just keep working and working like this with different clients, and it'll happen. I can reach it. Yeah.
That's great.
And I can attest that watching Brian go through this process has been a great gift, because he's really advanced as a person to be able to stretch himself and to be able to take more risk and to be more professional and devote more time and energy to these goals, not just work, but goals, achieving those goals. So that's been really good.
This is really exciting. There's a lot to entrepreneurship that will, kind of rock your whole sense of
it's a
self.
whole different thing.
It's a whole different thing. It couldn't be more different, but it also forces a lot of growth, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I've had to learn a lot and push myself through discomforts and a lot of like conversations or like talks with different clients or booking certain gigs for another client. That also I've thought about you a lot, that it's like when quoting people specific numbers for like a catering event for like a company I work with, I've had to get out of my mind where I'm like, oh my God, $4,000 for like 2 hours of an oyster bar. That's like a lot, but it's like, some people, it's not a lot. It's very doable, that it's like, I'm having to change the way I think. And also with clients that I get, that I'm like, oh my God, like people are willing to pay $3,000 a month, like on a retainer to like, it's not that big of a number that sometimes when you've never dealt with it or worked with it, it does seem scary. It does seem too much to like, pitch for your services, that I heard that on a podcast too about that. It's like, you have to change the way you think about it, because there's companies that you're going to work with and they're going to have a $40,000 budget to work with
Right.
compared to somebody that works with $1,000 budget,
Right.
you know, and that's a big thing that you will undersell yourself for that.
Yeah.
So it's been a great learning experience.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. And that's part of leveling your mindset too, because when you see these numbers differently, that affects your whole personal life as well. How you're looking at, certain numbers. We have mindsets and set points around things. This is too much and this is not enough, and we can shift all those. I mean, it doesn't feel like it in the moment, but as we work with bigger and bigger numbers, they take on a different meaning.
So Brian, I did some, and Michelle, I did some research into who makes the best savers psychologically.
Oh.
And it wasn't such a surprise. Best savers psychologically are high in conscientiousness. These are the planners, the organizers, the people who follow rules,
Right.
the people who stop at stop signs. They're very conscientious about how things work. And they're also low in neuroticism, so I guess I'm out. But but basically, those are the people that they can roll with the punches. Like when
Yeah.
the stock market goes down, they're not going to be as bothered by it. Mm-hmm. And so the people who can roll with the punches and who are also diligent planners are the people who do the very best. They automate, they plan, they resist emotional decisions.
Yeah, that's great. And the emotional decisions. We're always making emotional decisions with money.
Aren't
Yeah. So
because money stands for other things.
It doesn't mean
security,
things.
freedom.
Yeah.
Status, power.
It stands for other things.
yeah.
But that's all societal.
Norms.
Yeah.
That isn't real. It's not, there's less truth about that than there is just thought. And so I do think what you said about automating, creating systems where these things happen without your involvement is, because then it doesn't matter, good mood, bad mood, it's happening regardless. So smart.
And I think we have to get also, I think you said something kind of interesting to me, like we're, 20% of people are going to be in this good position in retirement. They're going to live longer. They're going to have better lives. And 80% are really more in the, they're on the hamster wheel. It's not always easy. And so that's the majority. But, you kind of triggered for me, like living in LA. We were talking about living in LA. It's an expensive city. But I managed to just kind of flit about here, not spending a great deal of money sometimes because I go here and there because I know where to go. And then
Right.
I direct where I spend my money.
Right.
Where I don't spend it in some places, I spend it in others. So LA also offers a lot of bargains, but you have to kind of live in a place to know where those bargains are.
Right. Yeah. So you are managing your money. I mean, you're doing a lot of, maybe it's, conscious, maybe it's become unconscious in certain ways, but, again, we don't give ourselves much credit for the things we do.
For what?
You've stayed in your house. I mean, I was with an attorney, very successful business attorney the other day, and we both went to the same wedding, and she took a train. I drove her back, and she told me she didn't drive because her car is a 2004 Honda. I mean, she could drive anything she wants, but she doesn't care about cars, and the car runs fine, and so that's her choice to not do that. And she does a lot of other things that cost money, but so we make whatever choices we make. And she also doesn't feel that I need to show off and have a Porsche because I'm a successful attorney.
No, that's so
she's not
interesting.
falling into that trap either.
Yeah. So she doesn't need to. She doesn't need to signal success. She has it.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's a whole different mindset.
yeah.
Yeah. So with the retirement system, the dream seems to be breaking. We have to reassess. Obviously, what are some takeaways about how maybe we could start looking at our lifespan and toward the end of life that really might help us in the long run?
Yeah, well, I think we, again, should be as savvy as possible about what's available to us. There are tricks, even with things like Medicare and Social Security, that make more sense than other things. I actually hired a Medicare coach because I didn't have the time. Once Medicare rolled around, I started looking at all the options, and it was confusing. And so I got somebody to help me decide what to pick.
Very good.
it cost a little money to hire her, but I felt so much more confident in what I got.
Very good.
And
That's smart.
just the planning. I mean, we should be planning. We shouldn't act like I'll just, throw caution to the wind and whatever happens, happens. But we should plan regardless of whether we can meet the targets that the world says we need. Like, meet the targets you can meet. If you can't put, $1,000 a month in a retirement plan, put something in there.
My biggest regret is that I didn't start earlier with tiny amounts of money. I was thinking I was told $20 a month, and I'm like, that's just too little.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I regret that.
Yeah. No, I did the same. I think that message is out there more because of social media that, you can put $100 a month in starting when you're in your 20s and, you'll have $1 million at 65. But I do think, educate yourself around money. Know what you're doing. People have 401ks. They're not even managed. They don't even know what's going on in them. They have them for 20 years and don't look at them. And so there are things that we can certainly get more involved in. And we should make it a process. The whole future retirement thing, I think, most of the world is just sort of, I don't know, ignoring it, delaying, looking into it. And that's the biggest mistake. As somebody said, your point was a really good one. Somebody was just saying, a client of mine, was saying, yeah, when I get this new job, I'll start whatever again. Mm-hmm. And she's about Brian's age. And it's the same thing. It's like, do not wait. I don't know what you're waiting for. A lot of people are waiting till they learn more. They want to understand investing better or until an income level is somewhere. Just don't wait. Just start now. Mm-hmm. Whatever age you can, the earlier, the better. The waiting is the problem.
And to learn more, they could call you or they could check out your website, limitfreelife.com.
Yes.
Limitfreelife.com. Our guest today was Michelle Perkins, financial coach, recovering CPA, brilliant guest. Thank you so much for being here. Check out Michelle's website. Also her podcast, Money and You with Michelle Perkins, on all of the podcast providers. Hey, thank you so much for being here, Michelle.
Thank you. Well, I so appreciate it. I love talking to you guys. It's always so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, we love you, so it's mutual. And thank you all. We love you too. Thanks for joining us for Off the Couch with Dr. Greg. If you saw yourself in what we're talking about in today's money patterns, take a breath. You're not broken. You're just human. Remember that insight or awareness is the first step, but action is what moves the needle. Beliefs, behaviors, and so does social support. And that's, getting people around you who really know what they're doing and who support your goals. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. Don't forget to rate, review, follow Off the Couch with Dr. Greg on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Links to I got some studies and articles, but man, we went way off the page today. You can check them out on youtube.com/Dr. Greg or hit us up on socials at Ask Dr. Greg. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.